Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Come on. Go guys, do it. Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, I want to go second last.
Come on, go ahead now.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma kulli walika al-hujjat min Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala bahi fi hadhihi shad wa fi kulli shad wa liyum wa hafza qaida wa nasira wa dalina wa ina hatta tashkina wa zakatuha wa tamatu fiha tawila birahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Come on, line it up here, everybody. Jane Parwan baki ja nahi aayi hai. Alright, good. Alright, no laughing, no laughing. Just
أعوذ بالله من
okay. Guys. Chalo, bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر وصل بك وانهر إنا شانئك هو الأبتر. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I forgot what I was gonna do. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Tabbat yada abi lahabi wa tab ma agna anhum maluhu wa ma kasab sayasla naran zata lahab wa imra'atuhu hammalatal hatab fi jidha hablum min masad. I forgot what I was gonna say. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل يا أيها الكافرون لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم لكم دينكم ولي دين.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli rabbika wanhar inna shani'aka huwal abtar.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahu Ahad, Allahu Samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Slowly, just do it slowly.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
That's fine. If listen, whosoever does it, they get the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the more you do it, the more benefits you get, inshallah. Okay? So recite loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala. So we're going to have a last surah and inshallah we'll start the lecture after that, okay? Inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف العلى صحف إبراهيم وموسى صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
Please recite loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allah. صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يسينا معه العدون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بهد الهمم ولا يناله غوث الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت محدود ولا أجل ممدود فترى الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووتد بالصخور ميدان أرض ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيبنا وحبيب رب العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن على أعدائهم أجمعين من أول يوم ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد فقال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المبين وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وَنَادَيْنَاهُ أَنْ يَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ قَدْ صَدَّقْتَ الرُّؤْيَا إِنَّ كَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ بَلَاءٌ مُبِينٌ وَفَدَّيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ وَتَرَكْنَا عَلَيْهِ فِي الْآخِرِينَ سَلَامٌ عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ صدق الله العلي العظيم. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, I am the English speaker for these next 10 to 12 nights, and the month of Muharram is upon us. And we all need to understand what the significance of this month is. We all need to understand why we commemorate Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam in this month of Muharram. We need to understand how important his sacrifice was. Why? Because that sacrifice that Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam gave 1400 years ago, we see the effects of that sacrifice affecting us today. Why was that sacrifice so important? One. Two, what were the events that caused for Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam to eventually need to sacrifice his life? What were those events? If you look into history, you see that there were about 12, 13, 14 events that happened from the time of the Holy Prophet to the time when Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam sacrificed his life. There were 12, 13 major events. And if I was to ask anyone in this gathering, can you name me some of them? Most of you will name me what? Ghadir. Most of you will name me Ghadir. What happened on the day of Ghadir? That's what most of you will name me. If I was to ask about other events, most of us wouldn't know. But you have to remember that not accepting the events of Ghadir was just one pillar, was just one brick that was laid down for the sacrifice of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Just one. There were other events. For example, right before Ghadir, what was happening? Hajj. In the time of Hajj, while everyone is going around the Kaaba, there were some companions of the Holy Prophet who signed the document. These companions were known as Ashab Sahifa. What was that document and who were these companions and what was written in that document? Because that document itself is important. That was one of the pillars, one of the bricks that was laid down for Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam to have to sacrifice his life. One of them. Ghadir came afterwards. There were events that happened after Ghadir. But it wasn't only Ghadir. But we need to understand how important Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, these next 12, 13 nights that I'm here, that's what I will be focusing on. Each one of those events. Because each one of those events is very important for why Imam Hussein did what he had to do. He had to, I'm repeating it, he had to do what he had to do. He had to do what he did. He had to do what he did. Because of the way Islam was carrying or Islam was moving because of these events. But tonight, I just want to focus on what is the reason we look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam from a different perspective. We don't look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam the way the majority of Muslims look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We don't look at the event of Karbala the way the majority of Muslims look at the event of Karbala, in the sense that this event of Karbala was just fighting a war between two princes. Was this truly a war between two princes, or was this a war between right and wrong? Was this truly just a war that dealt with a Zahiri war, that dealt with Imam Hussein and Yazid lamtullah, or no? Was there something that was deeper than this? Because you have to remember, if Imam Hussein alayhi salam sacrificed his life because he wanted political power, just worldly rule, what did his father say about this world? What did Amir al-Mu'mineen say about this world? Read the Nahj Balagha. In the sermon of Shaqshaqiyya, what does Amir al-Mu'mineen say? He says that I think of this world is nothing more, one, than the sneeze of a goat. This world of yours, I don't think more of it than the sneeze of a goat. 1. 2, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says that I find this world to be what? I find this world to be in the bone in the hands of a leopard. This world. That was Amir al-Mu'mineen's view about the world. Do you think that his son Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam sacrificed his life for that type of view? Or no? Did he sacrifice his life for something completely different? That's what we need to figure out. Was it just for worldly or political reasons, or no, was it something more than that? And to understand that, we need to understand who and what Imam Hussein is. Who and what Imam Hussein is. These verses that I started this lecture off with, they deal with Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in these verses? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَادَيْنَاهُ أَنْ يَا Ibrahim. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we called out, Ya Ibrahim, you have truly fulfilled your vision. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he saw the dream where he was doing what? He was sacrificing his son, Ismail. He saw that dream 3 nights in a row. When he saw that dream 3 nights in a row, then Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam tells his son, he takes him to sacrifice. When he takes him to sacrifice his son, that's when these verses of the Quran, or that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Hazrat Ibrahim, Ya Ibrahim, you had seen the vision, you had seen my command, and truly you acted on that command. And then he goes on to say what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed we recompense the doers of good in this way only. What way? What way did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recompense the doers of good? What is the significance between these verses of Hazrat Ibrahim and Imam Hussein alayhi salam? At the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? Inna hadha lahu bala'un mubin wa faddaynahu bi zibhin azim. Wa faddaynahu bi zibhin azim. These verses, inshallah, I want to focus on tonight. What does this mean? That we have left this sacrifice. This sacrifice is an azim sacrifice. And we have left this sacrifice for akhirin. The next verse says what? That this sacrifice is for the akhirin. That means what? That means that Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam was not that zibhil azim that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about. This zibhil azim, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we've left this for akhirin, then that zibhil azim came when? Later. Who was the Zibhil Azim? Why is it that we consider that Zibhil Azim to be Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam? What makes Imam Hussein alayhi salam Zibhil Azim? The great sacrifice. What makes his sacrifice the great sacrifice? Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. To begin with, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, when Hazrat Ibrahim wanted a son, and this is a dua for anyone that wants children. This is a dua that's supposed to be recited after every prayer, where Hazrat Ibrahim, he says, Rabbi habli min as-salihin. Ya Allah, give me of the salihin. Give me of the salihin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he replies what? فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ. And we gave him the glad tidings of a forbearing son. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's asking for what? A salih son, a righteous son. A righteous son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies what? And we gave him a righteous son? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies that we gave him a forbearing son. We gave him a forbearing son. What does this mean? This means that you have to remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He wants to give you, He gives you better than what you ask for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always gives you better than what you ask for. Hazrat Ibrahim asked for a righteous son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him a forbearing son. That means what? Forbearing is better than being righteous. Being forbearing is better than being righteous. How and why? If someone is righteous, they've done good deeds, but they haven't forbeared anything of evil. What do I mean? Let me give you an example. There were two brothers. One of them, they decided, you know what? I've had enough. I can't live in the city. He goes to the jungle and he starts worshiping. He starts worshiping in the jungle. 10 years pass by. The other brother, he stays in the city and he becomes a blacksmith. When you go and you start worshiping, what have you become now? Righteous, correct? Now you're doing good deeds, now you're worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you're moving on the path of righteousness. This brother, he goes to the jungle and he starts worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 10 years go by. These brothers do not see each other in those 10 years. When they don't see each other in those 10 years, it happened that one day there was a traveler that was coming. That traveler goes through that jungle and he sees that brother. And that brother asks him, are you going to the city that's nearby? He goes, yes. He goes, can you do me a favor? I have a brother that's there. He's the blacksmith in the city. Can you give him something for me? The traveler goes, no problem, I'm going there anyways. What do you want me to give him? This man who went to the jungle, he became an abid. He became a worshipper. What did he do? Because of his worship, he took some water. He had a bowl. That bowl, it had holes in it. He took that bowl, he filled that bowl with water. What does he do with that bowl? He covers it with wrapping, with cloth. This man who's looking at that, he's stunned. Why? Because now there's a bowl with holes, he fills it with water, and no water is dripping through the bowl. There's no water that's dripping through the bowl. And now that he's covered with the cloth isn't getting wet. It's not getting wet. He's stunned. The man, he goes, can you give this to my brother? He's the blacksmith, go take it to him. The man, he goes to the city. When he goes to the city, he meets the blacksmith. He goes, do you have a brother that's in the jungle? He goes, yes, I do. He goes, this is a gift that he told me to give you. He opens it and he sees that it's a bowl with water, and the water is filled to the brim and not one drop has fallen out. He goes, okay. He puts it on the shelf. When he puts it on the shelf, he tells this traveler, when you're about to go back, please come back to me. I have something to give you to give to him. Forbearing, the difference between forbearing and being just righteous. The traveler, when he's about to go back, he comes back to the blacksmith. And the blacksmith, in front of that traveler, what does he do? He reaches in to where he was making the weapons and the shields. He reaches into that. He takes out a coal with his bare hands, hot burning coal. He takes it out with his bare hands. He puts it on top of cotton. And he wraps that cotton in cloth. Then he gives that to this traveler. And he says, you know what, take this back to my brother. When you meet him there. This traveler now stunned. This man, he just reached into there. He got a burning coal, put it in cloth, and the cloth isn't burning. He goes back. When he goes back and he gives his brother this gift, the brother opens it up and he sees that neither the cotton has burned, nor the cloth has burned, but that coal that was in there, it's still burning hot. So now he's stunned. How is it possible that he's able to do this? How is it possible? He comes back from the jungle. He goes straight to his brother. And he asks him, how were you able to do that? Brings the coal with him. How are you able to do this? The brother, he looks at him and he goes, just because you went to the jungle and you were worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this long, you think you reached the status? You think you reached some high status? He goes, tell me, how were you able to do this? He goes, look, you being in the jungle and worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there were no sins around you for you to commit. You were completely away from sins. There was nothing to entice you to sin. But me, I'm here in the city. Everything around me is enticing me to sin. But I refrained from sinning for these last 10 years. And because of that, I'm able to do this. As he said this, there was a woman who walks into the blacksmith. A woman who walks in. The abid who had just come from the jungle, He looks at that woman. As soon as he puts his eyes on that woman, what happens? The water from that pot, it starts to drip. It starts to drip. Do you see the difference between just being an abid and being a true or truly having taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If you truly want taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not out in the jungles. It's not in the Islamic countries, no. It's in these countries where you're supposed to train yourself to have that type of taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they give the example, the ulama, they give the example. They say, look, the kamal of this human being is when they're surrounded by sin, but they refrain from sinning. That's the kamal. That's the prestige of this human being. That they're surrounded by sin, but they refrain from sinning. If you and I want to follow the footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt, that's what we need to do. Look at the companions that they had and follow their footsteps. Why do I not say follow the footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam? Why? Because if I was to say that, what would everyone say? Maulana Sahib, they're all masoom. They're all infallible. How can we follow their footsteps? If you can't follow their footsteps, then look at the companions that they had and follow their footsteps. Was Salman Farsi infallible? No, he wasn't. Abu Zar Ghaffari infallible? No, he wasn't. Or look at the companions that Imam Hussein alayhi salam had. Were they infallible? No, they weren't. Follow their footsteps. Look at what they did. Look at what they did. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, Hazrat Ismail. Hazrat Ismail, he gets older. As he gets older, now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered Hazrat Ibrahim to sacrifice his son. To sacrifice his son. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he complies. And as he was about to sacrifice his son, what happened? There was a ram that was given. There was a ram that came from the heavens, and that ram was slaughtered instead of Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. Now the question is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that we have left this sacrifice. This sacrifice is an azim sacrifice. Was that ram the azim sacrifice? Was that ram the great sacrifice? Because if you look at a lot of the Sunni Mufassirin, they say that that ram that was sacrificed instead of Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam, that was the great sacrifice. If that's true, what are you telling me about Nabiullah Ismail alayhi salam? You have Nabiullah Ismail, who's a prophet of God, and you have a ram that's come from heaven. What is greater, a prophet or a ram? A prophet. If a prophet is greater, then how can this ram be the azim sacrifice? No. This sacrifice was great, not just from one aspect. It needed to be great from every single aspect. What do I mean by that? Hazrat Ibrahim, in Mina, Hazrat Ibrahim, a father, he's sacrificing what for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? His son, correct? How many sons is he sacrificing? Just one. You look at Karbala, you have a father. He's also sacrificing for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who is he sacrificing? Every single child, every single son that he had. You look at Mina, compare the two events, and you'll understand why Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam, his sacrifice is the greatest sacrifice, that great sacrifice that the Quran talks about. You look at Mina, the father, what does he do? He puts a bandana over his eyes when he wants to sacrifice his son Ismail alayhi salam. You look at Karbala, the father does not put a bandana over his eyes when Ali al-Akbar goes out. The father does not put a bandana over his eyes when Ali al-Asghar goes out in his arms. You look at Mina, the son that was being sacrificed in Mina, how old was he? Some narrations 11, other narrations 14. You look at the son that was being sacrificed in Karbala, how old was he? The youngest was 6 months old. The youngest was 6 months old. You look at Mina, and what happened there? The mother, when she sees the marks on Hazrat Ismail's throat, on Hazrat Ismail's neck, the narrations, they say what? That 3 days after she saw those marks, she passed away. She passed away. She couldn't handle it. You look at Karbala, you look at the mothers that saw their children being sacrificed in front of them. What were they doing? The night before, they were telling each one of those kids, if you do not sacrifice your life for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, then the milk that we have fed you is haram for you. The milk that we have fed you is haram for you. This is the reason that sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is greater than the sacrifice of Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. But what if I was to tell you that the comparison isn't truly between Hazrat Ismail and Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam? It's not. Sayyid Hashim Bahrani, in his tafsir al-Burhan fi tafsir al-Quran, in his tafsir for these verses, he has a narration from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He has a narration from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, where Imam Sadiq says that when Hazrat Ibrahim was ordered to sacrifice Hazrat Ismail, and he wasn't able to because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, no, you're going to sacrifice and send this ram. Hazrat Ibrahim, he realized what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted. He wanted, instead of to sacrifice Hazrat Ismail, he wanted that ram to be sacrificed. When he wanted that ram to be sacrificed, that's when Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he started to feel sad. When he started to feel sad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says to Hazrat Ibrahim, Ya Ibrahim, can you tell me who's greater in your eyes? You or my last prophet? Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he replies, Ya Allah, your last prophet. There's no one greater than him. There's no one greater than him. That's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says to Hazrat Ibrahim, Ya Ibrahim, tell me, in your eyes, who do you love more? Do you love your son more, or would you love his sons more? Who do you love more? Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he replies, Ya Allah, I love his sons more. I love his son more. That's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Ibrahim, Ya Ibrahim, if you love his son more, tell me, would you be more sad over the loss of your son, or would you be more sad over the loss of his son? He said, Ya Allah, I would be devastated. I'd be more sad over the loss of his son. I'd be more sad, more devastated over the loss of his son. That's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Ibrahim, Ya Ibrahim, if that's truly the case, then you should know that his son will die thirsty in the lands of Karbala. You should know that the people that read the kalima of his grandfather are the ones that will kill him. You should know that his family will be captive and they'll be taken and paraded in the streets. And Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he hears this, he starts to cry. He starts to cry. That's when Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says what? He says that the comparison isn't between Hazrat Ibrahim or Hazrat Ismail and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The comparison is between that feeling of sadness. Who would you feel more sad over? Hazrat Ismail or Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam? And that feeling of sadness, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam himself answers, we would be more sad over what? The sacrifice of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. That's why we say that this sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is truly that Zibh al-Azim that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran. And how do you know that this is that sacrifice? Surah al-Fajr. Another name for that surah is what? Surah al-Hussein. Thank you so much. How does that surah go? It starts off how? I swear by the Fajr. I swear by the Fajr. What Fajr is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by? I swear by the night. What night is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing? I swear by those 10 nights What 10 nights is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by? I swear by the shifa and witr. What shifa and witr is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by? Is this any 10 nights? Is this one, or is this particular 10 nights? Is this anyone's shifa and witr prayers? Or no, is this a particular person's shifa and witr prayers? It has to be a particular person's. There's a video. If you understand Punjabi, please, I have the video with me in my phone. If anyone requires it, I'll send it to them. Where in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, a man from Pakistan, he goes to study in Syria. He studies in Syria and then he goes to Najaf to debate with Ayatollah Mohsin Hakim. And in the 60s, in the 50s, Ayatollah Mohsin Hakim, he was the grand Maharaja of that time. And in Iraq, there was no one else except him, in the sense that they would call out. When I was studying in Najaf, I had teachers that would say that in his time, Hakam al-Hakim, meaning what? Hakim, Ayatollah Hakim, he's given his hukum. When it came to the moon sighting, when it came to all of these Islamic rulings, they would say Hakam al-Hakim. Hakim has given his hukum. This Grand Maharaja, this person from Pakistan, he goes studies in Syria, and then he was sent to debate with Ayatollah Hakim. He comes to that debate, and he himself, he says, look, at that time I was young, I used to have really long hair, and I came to this place in Najaf, and I see what a lot of people, they go from the West, and what do they see that aren't Shia? They see a mausoleum in Najaf, which is made out of, the dome is made out of gold. They see people going and attaching themselves to the Zariya of Amir al-Mu'mineen and asking for whatever they want to ask for. So he says that I go there and I see all of this, and I just go around just looking at the place. Not for any particular reason. I wasn't doing any ziyarat or anything, but I just look around. And as soon as I come out, I see there was a man, a Mama Baqaba, wearing the Shia garb. He says to me, and he says salam to me, I reply with salam, and then he asks me, are you from Pakistan? Yes, I'm from Pakistan. And he goes, where are you from? From Syria. So he goes, are you the person that's supposed to debate Mohsin Hakim? He goes, yes, I'm that person. I'm that person. He goes, okay, come with me. We'll go to his office, and you can wait for him there. They take him into the office. Ayatollah Mohsin Hakim, he comes, and he says to him, can I ask you a question? He goes, what is it? The questions that you have brought for me, have you told those questions to anyone? Have you told those questions to anyone? He goes, no. These questions are in my mind. I haven't told these questions to anyone at all. These questions are in my mind. He goes, okay. You didn't tell anyone back home? And you didn't tell anyone when you got here? No, I didn't. Okay. He goes, what if you were to receive the answers to those questions without you even asking me what those questions are? What would you say then? He said, if that's your claim, then you're claiming to know the unseen. You're claiming to have ilm ghaib. He goes, no, I'm not making that claim. I'm not telling you I will give you the answers. I'm telling you, Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib, he'll be giving you the answers. He goes, what do you mean? What do you mean, Ali? He's been dead. This is their aqeedah. He's been dead for 1400 years. How will he? He goes, don't worry. You go in there and just wait. He says that I went in there, they closed all the doors. Now I was afraid because there's no one else in here, that's just me. I thought that maybe someone was hiding behind one of the pillars and they were going to kill me. They were going to kill me. And then I go around and there's no one there. But there's something I noticed. I made my way around one time, nothing. When I started making my way around a second time, I see that there is a piece of paper on the floor. And that paper is moving. So I go and pick it up. When I go and pick it up, the first thing I see is the questions that I had in my mind, those questions are on there with the answers. With the answers. Then I asked myself, what is this? There was no one here. This paper was not here before. All of a sudden, this paper appears. What's going on? Then he goes, I see I start looking towards the zari. When I start looking towards the zari, I see that there's a figure in there. And that figure tells me to come closer. When I go closer, I see that that's Ali ibn Abi Talib. I'm looking at, he says that I spoke to him when? In the late 50s and the 60s. I spoke to him directly for over 20 minutes. For over 20 minutes. I spoke to him directly for over 20 minutes. And he says to me, I had already received the answers, but the only reason I wanted to speak to him more, that's the reason I asked him those same questions that were already written. For 20 minutes, over 20, I spoke to him. He goes, one of the things that I asked Amir al-Mu'mineen is, Ya Ali, whenever someone calls your name, a lot of people have this question. Why didn't Imam Ali alayhi salam, he helped Imam Hussein? He goes, whenever someone's called your name for help, you go and help them. The Shias, they claim that whenever we need help, we call you and you help them. Is that true? Yes, that's true. Then why didn't you help your son Hussein in Karbala? Why didn't you help him? Mawla Ali, he replies, you have to know that when someone wants their life saved, then we go and help him. When someone wants their life saved, then we go and help them. My son Hussein had already decided that he's going to sacrifice his life for Allah. But you should know that I was there. His mother Fatima was there. Rasulullah was there. Hassan was there. All of us were there. But he had already determined that he is going to sacrifice his life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he was already determined and he didn't want our help, why would we force our help for him? Why would we force? He didn't want it. He didn't require it. He himself, he saw that his sacrifice was required for Islam to reach where it needed to reach. This question a lot of people have. But why was that? Why was that man who wasn't even a Shia, why was he able to converse with Amir al-Mu'mineen? Not in his dream, no. In his life, why was he able to converse? He's not even a Shia. What had that man done that Amir al-Mu'mineen himself, he came to converse with him? Do you all know? He defended his father, Hazrat Abu Talib alayhi salam, in Sham. In Sham. What was that defense? What was that defense? A lot of the Sunnis, they consider Hazrat Abu Talib to be what? Kafir, a non-Muslim. He says that I wanted to know what this is about. I wanted to know what this is about. Hazrat Abu Talib is a kafir. When it came to his wedding, he says that I want a kafir, a non-Muslim, to recite my wedding. I want a kafir to recite my wedding. The ulama there, they say, what? That can't happen. It's not jaiz. He goes, why not? Don't we believe that Abu Talib was a kafir? At the same time, it was Abu Talib who recited Rasulullah's wedding sighas. How is it permissible for him to do it at that time, but it's not permissible for someone to do it now? And that too, whose wedding? The Holy Prophet's wedding. How is that correct? Those ulama understood what he was trying to say. And they came to the conclusion, yes, this belief, we need to look at this belief. He himself, he says that is the reason. Amir al-Mu'mineen told him, that is the reason, because you defended my father, this is the reason that I'm coming to you and answering these questions. You don't need to pray salat completely all the time. I'm not saying don't do it, no. But that's not what makes someone closer to the Ahlul Bayt. Pray, of course. But just praying does not take you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that was it, then Ghadir would not have happened. If that was it, then the sermon of Ghadir would not be required. What did the last prophet say? He said, I'm leaving behind you two weighty things. What are those two weighty things? The Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. You need to take both of them to reach that status where you can become Salman of the time. You need to take both of them so you can reach that status where you become Misam and Tammar. You need to take both of them so you can reach that status of those companions of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Both of them. Look at all those companions. They knew the ma'rifat of the Imam of the time. They knew their ma'rifat. Do you and I have the ma'rifat of the Imam of our time that we can say, yes, we're ready to sacrifice our life? 20,000 people wrote to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein al-Islam, who considered themselves to be Shi'as. 20,000 people from Kufa telling Abu Abdullah what? Ya Hussein, come, we need a leader. We want you to lead us. Where were those 20,000 people in Karbala? Most of them were on the side of Yazid. There are narrations that state that there were people there on the side of Yazid. He didn't give them money. No. They were there fighting against Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam for a handful of dates. They murdered the grandson of Rasulullah for what? For a handful of dates. Those are the Shi'as. Those people considered themselves to be Shi'as. It's one thing for us to say, Labbaik ya Imam today, but tomorrow when the Imam comes, we're on the side of Dajjal. Tomorrow when the Imam comes, we're on the side of Abu Sufyan. So how do you and I not go to that side? Is it just through prayers? No, it's not. Is it just through Quran? No, it's not. No, it's not. The prayers, the Quran, the Siyam, all of that, but with the azadari that we gather here for these next 2 months. Never forget that. Never forget that. Because this azadari that you and I do, who is this for? Is this for Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Or is this for our own akhirah? This is for our akhirah. For our akhirah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When it comes to the sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, this sacrifice isn't something to just gloss over. This sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we need to study it in depth and see why Imam Hussein did what he did. Why was he forced to do what he did? Inshallah, I said in the beginning, the next 10, 12 nights, we are going to look at each event and see how that led to, or why that event was important in Imam Hussein doing what he did. And the first event tomorrow that we will look at is Ashab Sahifa. Who were those people? What was written in that contract? Who signed that contract? Where was it written? What did the Holy Prophet say about those people that signed that contract? What did he say about them? What was the significance of that contract that was signed in regards to what the Holy Prophet was going to do in Ghadir? What Amir al-Mu'mineen was going to do after his Khilafat? What was the significance? Because that contract itself was the first stone that was laid down in regards to the events of Karbala. The very first stone. And who laid that stone down, who signed that contract, inshallah, we'll talk about that tomorrow. But tonight, the importance of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam, you compare his sacrifice to the sacrifice of the other prophets. All the other prophets. Compare it. You look at what Hazrat Musa alayhi salam did. You look at what Hazrat Isa alayhi salam did. Even if you look at the Christian version of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. Look at the Christian. Hazrat Isa, according to the Christian version, what does he do? He sacrifices himself. Correct? Christian version, not Muslim, not Islamic version, Christian version. Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, he only sacrifices himself. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he doesn't just sacrifice himself. He sacrifices his brothers, he sacrifices his children for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hazrat Ibrahim, he sacrificed just one son. Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, what does he sacrifice? Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam, you look at Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam, compare the events that he went through and you look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Hazrat Yaqub, Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, he didn't die, he wasn't dead. He just disappeared from the eyes of Hazrat Yaqub. Is that true or no? He just disappeared from the eyes of Hazrat Yaqub. Hazrat Yaqub was in Madain. Hazrat Yusuf was in Egypt. He just disappeared from the eyes. But he cries so much over Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. What does the Quran say? That his eyesight had completely gone. He cries so much. And Hazrat Yusuf is still alive. You look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The sons are being martyred in front of his eyes. The sons are being martyred in front of his eyes. His nephews are being martyred in front of his eyes. His brothers are being martyred in front of his eyes. But there's no narration that states that his eyesight had completely gone because he was crying so much for all of them. You see why the sacrifice of Imam Hussein is greater than what these prophets sacrificed? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this sacrifice is a great sacrifice. So that means that it needs to be great from every respect, from every aspect. Not just one. Not just one. And brothers, sisters, when you look at Imam Hussein, it's the 25th of Rajab. It's Medina. Marwan, he has told the governor of Medina that you need to call Hussein and have him pledge allegiance to Yazid. You need to call Hussein and have him pledge allegiance to Yazid. When Imam Hussein, he hears this, he tells his sister Zainab, "Oh Zainab, Marwan has ordered me to come and he wants me to pledge allegiance to Yazid." Lady Zainab, she starts to cry and she says, "Oh brother, I think they're trying to kill you." Imam Hussein, he says, "Oh my sister, do not worry. Marwan is not my murderer. Oh my sister, do not worry. It's not here in Medina that I will die." What does Lady Zainab say? Lady Zainab, she tells Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, "Ya Hussein, please take the Hashimi youths and go tell them to go with you." Why? So that my heart might be at ease. When she says this, Imam Hussein, he says to her, "Do not worry, you don't need to worry this much, your sister. Nothing will have to happen to me." But she looks at Abul Fazl Abbas and she says to him, "Oh my brother, please go with him so that nothing will happen to him." Mullah Abbas, he takes some of the Banu Hashim, they go with Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. When they go with Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, Mullah Hussein, he tells Abul Fazl Abbas, "I want you to stay out here. Ya Abbas, I want you to stay out here." Mullah Abbas, he says, "Oh my master, how will I know when to come in? How will I know when to come in?" Imam Hussein, he looks at Abbas and he says, "Ya Abbas, when you hear my voice raised, when you hear my voice rise, then I want you to come in. Before that, don't do anything." The narrations, they state that Marwan and the governor, they tell Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, "We want you to pay bay'ah to Yazid." That's when Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, "A man like me will never pledge allegiance to a man like Yazid. A man like me will never pledge allegiance to a man like Yazid." When he says this, he gets up to leave. When he gets up to leave, that's when Marwan, he tells the governor, "If you don't kill him now, then he will never pledge allegiance to him. So you kill him now." When he says this, that's when Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he raises his voice and he says, "Marwan, are you the one who's going to kill me, or is he the one who's going to kill me?" As soon as he raises his voice, that's when Abul Fazl, he comes in with his sword unsheathed and he says, "Oh master, whose head should I sever first?" That's when Imam Hussein, he says to him, "Ya Abbas, you will not kill anyone here." Why? Because this is the city of my prophet. This is the city of Rasulullah. This is the city of my grandfather. This is where my family is buried. We will not shed any blood here. Go sheath your sword. That's when Abul Fazl Abbas, he sheaths his sword, and that's when they leave. Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulallah. Sallallahu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sallallahu alayki ya Siddiqatu Fatima. Sallallahu alayka ya Hasan al-Mujtaba. Sallallahu alayka ya Gharib al-Ghuraba. Ya Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. Ya Hussein. Brother, sister, when Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is up, he goes back and tells Lady Zainab, oh my sister, we have to leave the city tonight. When he says this, the Banu Hashim, they gather everything that they could. While they were gathering everything they could, Mullah Hussein, he goes to the grave of grandfather Rasulullah, and he says on that grave, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. Oh my grandfather, this is my last salam to you. Now I will leave Medina and do what I need to do. Then he goes to the grave of his brother Hassan, and he gives him his last salam. Then he goes to the grave of his mother, and he says to her and gives her his last salam. When he comes back home, everyone was ready to go. When everyone was ready to go, Abul Fazl Abbas alayhi salam, he comes out of the door and he says to everyone cast down your eyes now. Why? Because Zainab bint Ali is about to come out. Brothers, sisters, Zainab bint Ali, Lady Zainab, when she's going from Medina, Abul Fazl Abbas is there to put her on that camel. Ali al-Akbar is there to put her on that camel. Imam Hussein is there to help her get on that camel. But when she's leaving Karbala, there's no one there to help her. Brother, sister, when they're leaving Medina, they all go. But there's an 8-year-old daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. She's too ill, but she still wants to go. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he looks at her and he says to her, oh Sukaina, you will not be able to make this journey. Please stay here. Fatima Sughra, she says, oh father dear, please, I want to go with you. He says, no, you will not be able to make this journey. Please, you have to stay here. When he says this, Fatima Sughra, she says to her father, oh father dear, if I have to stay here, then please, there's no reason for you to take Ali al-Asghar. Please keep him with me. Ali al-Asghar, what was he doing at that time? He had hugged his sister Fatima Sughra, and he wasn't going and he wasn't leaving that lap. The mother would come, he wouldn't leave the lap. When this Imam Hussein, he sees this, he whispers into the ears of Ali al-Asghar something. When he whispers into Ali al-Asghar's ears, Ali al-Asghar, what does he do? He smiles and he goes to his father. When he goes to his father, Fatima Sughra understood that he was also supposed to go with them. They all leave. Fatima Sughra, she's there and she asks, oh father dear, will you please come back and get me when I'm better? What does Imam Hussein say? He says to her, oh Fatima, I will definitely send your brother Ali al-Akbar to come and get you. Do not worry. I will send him to come and get you. You don't have to worry about that. Brothers and sisters, when Imam Hussein leaves Karbala, he leaves with all of the Banu Hashim. But when Lady Zainab, she's leaving Karbala, from Karbala to Kufa, the narrations, they say that when they were leaving on this journey, there were over 80 children on this journey. 80 children. When Lady Zainab comes back from Sham to Medina, the narrations, they state that all of the children could be counted in one hand. What happened to all of those children on this route? What do the narrations state? The narrations, they state that whenever a child would fall down, that caravan would not stop. They would continue to go. Anyone that's gone to Karbala, you'd see a place that says Binat al-Hasan. You'd see a place that says that this is where one of the sons of Imam Hassan lie. This is where one of the sons of Ali ibn Abi Talib lie. This is where one of the daughters of Imam Hassan lies. Why was that? Because this caravan would not stop. If a child was to fall down, what would they do? They would just trample over the body and they'd move on. This is the reason why Lady Zainab, when she came back, there were only no more than 5 or 6 children in her hands. Brothers and sisters, what Lady Zainab went through, no other person went through in their lifetime. That's why she's known as Ummul Masaib. These are the days that we commemorate Ummul Masaib. These are the days that we commemorate who? Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam and his sacrifice. Ya Allah, I ask you to forgive our sins. I ask you to forgive the sins of all the mu'mineen, mu'minat that are gathered here tonight. I ask you to hasten the reappearance of Imam Zaman and let us be able to sacrifice our life for him and his cause. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Matam Hussein.
कारवा 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 यथरब से सूए करबला एक कारवा रुखसत हुआ सर पे अलम साया फिगन गाजी की आती है सदा पहला सफ़र ज़ैनब का है सुनसान कर दो रास्ता कारवा कारवा अब्बास मीरे कारवा 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 अब्बास मीरे कारवा क्या शान है क्या दबदबा क्या लोग है कुर्रानुमा सल्ले अला आयात का है काफिला मश्को अलम इनका निशा अब्बास मीरे कारवा 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 अब्बास मीरे कारवा अल्लाह के प्यारे हैं ये आले नबी सारे हैं ये कुरान के पारे हैं ये कौनैन के तारे हैं ये ज़ेरे कदम है आसमां अब्बास मीरे कारवा 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 अब्बास मीरे कारवा कोई शबी है मुस्तफ़ा कोई हसन का दिलरुबा है कोई आग से सैयदा शब्बीर का ये काफिला तामे अलम जो है जवा अब्बास मीरे कारवा 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 अब्बास मीरे कारवा यथरब से ताबा करबला हर दिन तवाफ़े काफिला अब्बास करता ही रहा पर्दे का जिम्मेदार था युन मुतमइन की बीबिया अब्बास मीरे कारवा 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 अब्बास मीरे कारवा 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 अब्बास मीरे कारवा या हुसैन पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
अस्सलामु अलैका या रसूल अल्लाह अस्सलामु अलैका या अमीर अल-मोमिनीन अस्सलामु अलैका या सिद्दीक़त फ़ातिमत ज़हरा सय्यदतुन निसा